Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Beyond the Cage podcast presented by Fight Chicks. On the show this week, we have a host of headlines to go over, including Vanderlei Silva and John Jones and Daniel Cormier's punishment from the Nevada State Athletic Commission. We also will talk some Bellator 125 and 126, and we also have to break down UFC Fight Night 52 from Japan, and we will also pick the main card fights for UFC 178 in Las Vegas this weekend on pay-per-view. I'm your host, Jim Graham. Alongside me is my co-host, The Juice, Dave Sadler, and The Juice, counting down the hours, minutes, and seconds till he leaves for Vegas for UFC 178, right?
Yep. It's Wednesday at noon, and then we leave incredibly early Friday morning. I just printed out my fan club RSVP so that we can attend the, when they have the weigh-ins, they usually have a little event before for the Fight Club members, and this week is the UFC 181 press conference, which, Jim, in my excellent broadcasting abilities, is an incredible segue because 181 has a new main event. Chris Weidman broke his hand, and now, instead of it being Chris Weidman and Vitor Belfort at 181, now we get Robbie Lawler and Johnny Hendricks numeral dos. So let me get your comments on two things. One, how great was that transition from what I'm doing right into the show? And two, what do you think of the change of the main event?
First of all, that may be the best transition you've ever done. So let's throw that out there right now. You can use your clapping Google effects since you already have those queued up in advance this time. So that's another bonus for Dave right there. And number two, yes, we're going to go over that news. Chris Weidman, I think that was yesterday, right? Yesterday or Monday, the reports came out that he had broke his hand while training. His fight against Vitor Belfort looks to be pushed back until February, so Vitor will not find a new opponent. I was thinking, depending on the time length, Dave, I thought that maybe Jacare could slip in there and fight Vitor on that card, but they're just simply kind of pushing it back a little bit. But one thing I do want to throw out, as people know, I collect the UFC cards, and if you saw the video, Dave collects them too. That's just exclusively me. But I did a couple of videos for the new UFC Champion set, and if you watched either of those videos, maybe you haven't, check them out. They're right on your YouTube channel, right here, youtube.com/BeyondTheCagePodcast. And in one of the videos, I got the gold parallel card for Chris Weidman. And if you're not familiar with the new set, the gold parallel cards for every fighter have a code on the back. You enter this code on the Topps website, and if that fighter is the UFC champion at the end of the year, you and whoever else has entered the code for that particular fighter get entered in a raffle for a signed autographed belt, a UFC belt from that fighter. So I hate to say the injury is a good thing, but the way it came about, Dave, the Chris Weidman card that I have, the code, he's guaranteed to be the UFC champion at the end of the year, so I have a shot to get into that raffle. And when I heard the news, I was really excited but also disappointed at the same time because I was like, well, I didn't want it to come because of an injury. You know, I feel bad Chris Weidman got hurt, but, you know, it could work out for me. I could get some autographed belt out of the process.
Yeah, hey, those are the risks you take. Because, if you have a Vitor gold card, you're probably not real happy because it's not your fault that you lost out on the chance to get a belt. But, hey, them's the breaks.
Absolutely. Well, that's one headline that got delayed. And then, as you said, Robbie Lawler, Johnny Hendricks, that wasn't scheduled yet for a fight. We were kind of waiting when it was going to get booked. Finally got booked. It's now going to take the main event of 181, which is interesting today because 181 already had Pettis and Melendez. So it's interesting that the UFC felt the need to put another title fight on the card. I'm not complaining. I love two title fights on the card, but considering some of the lackluster main events we've had and some of the lackluster pay-per-views, I'm kind of surprised they didn't schedule that for another event.
Yeah, but Anthony Pettis is on the card, and the chances of him getting a paper cut while signing those posters are high, so they had to have a backup plan in case that main event fell through. Hold on.
All right, well, let's move on. I'm not going to even comment on that, and
Aww.
let's talk about some punishments, Dave. Punishments were handed out this week by the Nevada State Athletic Commission to John Jones and Daniel Cormier for their pre-fight media scrum brawl that happened. Was that like a month ago, 6 weeks ago, or whatever? And the punishments finally came out, and John Jones got the more severe punishment. He got fined. He got sentenced to, I think, over 40 hours of community service. And this is the commission didn't have anything to do with this, but as a result of the brawl in the hearing, Nike has apparently dropped John Jones from their sponsorship deal. And Daniel Cormier, he pretty much got about half the community service time and about half the amount of fine. Which I found was kind of interesting. And as far as I know, Daniel Cormier hasn't lost any type of endorsement deal. The biggest sponsor I think Cormier was with was Cage Fighter, but I don't think they were going to drop him. But that's the punishment that been doled out. I think a punishment did have to happen. I just find it odd that Jones is more severe from the athletic commission than Cormier. I thought that maybe would have been a little more even.
Yeah. First of all, I love both of the punishments. If you're John Jones and you're posting on Twitter and Instagram that the biggest concern that you have is doing 40 hours of community service in Las Vegas before a fight, you know what? I'm happy for every dollar that you lost because the fact that $50,000 isn't a big deal to you, and then you want to cry that you lost your Nike, and you keep saying, it was a six-figure deal. It was a six-figure deal. Well, okay, nobody cares. You have a six-figure deal to wear tennis shoes. Okay, great. You know, have fun doing your community service. I hope that it, you know, I hope it takes him out of his element in this training camp coming up. And you know what? Here's the thing. I've been getting into arguments left and right with people via Facebook, Jim. They're like, well, this is the fight game. This is supposed to happen. No, it's not. Football players hate each other, and they try to they try to decapitate people and all that kind of stuff. But the week leading up to the Super Bowl, you don't see them pushing each other. You know what I mean? Like when the World Series, you can see guys coaches have press conferences, and you don't see any of the shenanigans going on. If you're, John Jones and Daniel Cormier are two bright gentlemen. Cormier does great work on Fox. Jones is smart. Jones has a brand. You're in the fight game. You're going to get to punch the other guy in the face legally for up to 25 minutes. You were in Las Vegas to promote the fight, to have more people watch it, which puts more money in both of your pockets. Act like gentlemen for the 30 minutes that you're there. That's all you have to do. It just baffles me. And second point before you come back, the money was, I want to say it was 10% of their contracted amount. So that's why Cormier's was so low, because he's not a champion. And Jones, his money is much higher, his base pay for a fight, and that's why he was charged $50,000. They took it out of their contracted purses.
Okay, all right. Well, I guess when you look at that, it maybe makes a little more sense. But in terms of the hours of the community service, that probably could have been the same, though.
Probably, but
right. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, that's the way it came down, and Jones gets hit with the Nike thing, and maybe it came at the time of the punishment instead of coming at the time of the incident. Nike, I'm surprised, waited that long, and I didn't even hear any statement from Nike about this incident saying, oh, we're going to wait till a punishment. I didn't really hear anything about Nike. I wasn't even thinking, oh, his Nike sponsorship is in jeopardy. I don't think too many people were really thinking about that or commenting on that aspect. And then it came out he got dropped by Nike. But, I mean, he is the world champion, and if he wins this fight, he's still going to be the world champion, and big companies like Nike are going to want to sponsor him if he continues being the champion. So if I was John Jones, I wouldn't worry too much. You
Yeah.
know, you're down now, but at the end of the day, you know, you're still arguably the best fighter in the world. I mean, things still can't be that bad for you.
Hey, I'm under the impression via my Facebook that Nick from A&N Sports Cards is watching because he said, "Ooh, I didn't know you'd be on the screen. Gross." To
Is
which
he
I
referring
respond,
to me or you?
"Me." So
Oh,
to which I respond,
and you respond to that's why we did your interview over the phone?
"Yeah." Burn. Oh, wait a second. Hold on.
I'm sorry, Nick. That was there. I took it. So, all right. Let's stick with the punishments here by the Nevada State Athletic Commission. Vanderlei Silva, after his well, not really a failed drug test, but it goes down as a failed drug test when he decided not to take it in his proposed bout with Chael Sonnen back this summer. He has been fined $70,000, has been issued a lifetime ban by the state of Nevada, and with all that, Dave, he has decided to now retire, and I'm using quotes retiring because I think he could probably go fight in Asia or a grappling tournament or something somewhere if he really wanted to. So I'm going to use quotations on the word retire, but that is the punishment doled down for Vanderlei not taking his drug tests leading up to the Sonnen fight. And I get the money issue of it, the 70,000. I do not get the lifetime ban. To be quite honest, I don't really get that. I think a year would have been suffice, and I think regardless of the amount of the ban, I think Vanderlei Silva was probably saying he was going to retire or then he was going to go fight in Asia. I really think that his tenure with the UFC was done regardless of how this punishment came out, and I think just the lifetime ban is maybe a little excessive.
Yeah. Once again, I've been Facebooking since all this stuff came out when I was at work, and everybody's like, "Oh, the UFC, they threw Vanderlei under the bus. He's one of the best with this lifetime ban." Let me go back. With the lifetime ban, essentially, if Nevada says that he's going to get banned, the rest of the United States he's banned in, so he's not going to be able to fight anywhere. Because most of those athletic commissions hold up the same punishments. So people are like, man, UFC's got a hand in that. That way he can't go to Bellator. And people were saying that if Vanderlei went to Bellator or the World Series of Fighting, that he could single-handedly put them ahead of the UFC, which is absolutely ludicrous. Look, about 2.5 years ago, I completely agree that Vanderlei Silva was a big deal. He's a great fighter, very exciting. But all that stuff that he led up to, all the stuff in Pride and all that kind of stuff, the cool wiggling of the wrist or whatever he does, like that's all cool and everything, but your reputation is tarnished. I mean, there's no other way. All that buildup was tarnished because you ran away. At least if he took the test and failed it, you could be like, you know what? I made a mistake. It was me who made the mistake. Take your 1-year ban, and you have a chance to fight again. But you ran away, and part of his punishment is because he ran away, and then they put this on the hearing for the Nevada State Athletic Commission, and he didn't show up. He wasn't on the phone. He didn't phone it in. He didn't do anything. He didn't send a statement, anything. And it's just, I like Vanderlei Silva, but he's never going to fight again, and he's got nobody to blame but the guy in the mirror.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation. To be honest, I think once he avoided the test, I kind of already thought he's probably going to retire then, regardless of what punishment or if a punishment was going to happen. I thought he was going to retire. And yeah, I guess he can't go to Bellator now, but I honestly don't think he was ever going to go to Bellator or
Yeah,
World Series of Fighting. The more likely option is for him to go to ONE FC. And I
I
think
agree.
because he built up his career fighting in Japan and fighting overseas, that's a very viable option. And obviously, pretty much those of the countries have commissions or a lot of the drug testing and whatnot, so he pretty much can kind of do whatever. He can make money. He can still fight that way. It just won't be on the level of the UFC. So, he's going to have to pay $70,000. He's going to have to do that, and It does tarnish his reputation a little bit, and it may affect any standing with the UFC because he's a guy. Even though he didn't win a UFC title, Dave, I think the UFC could have put in their Hall of Fame because of his Pride credentials, and since the UFC kind of owns all the rights to Pride, I think he's a guy that would have made it in to the UFC Hall of Fame. Now, I'm not so sure. He's going to have to do some major, damage control with the organization, maybe salvage that. Maybe he doesn't care about that. I mean, but to be in there, he'd have to issue some type of apology and make everything better. But I don't think he really cares, to be honest. I mean, I think that's why he ran away from the test, and that's why he didn't show up for the hearing. I just don't think he cares.
True.
All right, let's get to, let's see, we already talked 181. We talked punishments. Let's talk a little Invicta news. Got an email yesterday, or maybe it was Monday, from Invicta announcing Invicta 9. It will be on November 1st, and it will be in Davenport, Iowa from the River Center. Of course, you can watch it live on the UFC Fight Pass. And our good friend Barb Honchak will defend her flyweight title against Takeo Hashi, and that will be the main event of Invicta 9. They also announced that Christine Cyborg Santos, or Justino as she's now going by, will headline Invicta 10, which is already booked for December 5th. A location hasn't been announced for that yet, and an opponent for Cyborg also hasn't been announced yet. But I have a feeling, Dave, that one will probably be in Kansas City, but who knows. Also, looking over some of the other fights on Invicta 9, they have the full fight card going in. And for the first time, Dave, I think since I started watching Invicta, not as many notable names. I recognize Caitlin Yun, Jody Iscobel, Rivera Konlak, but a lot of these other names I haven't heard before. So we're going to see a lot of new crop of fighters for Invicta 9, highlighted by the Barb Honchak fight.
Yep. To me, it's a perfect card. Barb gets to defend her title, kind of solidify her standing as the as the champ, and we get a bunch of people that we don't know. I already paid for the Fight Pass, so I'm gonna watch it anyway. And Invicta's doing the right thing. They're sending people to the UFC, so it shows that they got the right talent coming through. So we get to see that next crop of talent. So I'm completely excited for it. Just because you don't know who they are doesn't mean they're going to be boring fights. Those girls know that this is their fast track to the UFC. So expect some people to put on some really good shows.
And for Barb, I believe she's trained with Pat Miletich before. She's very familiar with the Iowa era, so somewhat of a homecoming for her, to so to speak, to have the card in Iowa. So I think that's kind of cool. And also, this is the first Invicta event outside of Kansas City, so I'll be interested to see what the crowd's like not being in Kansas City for the first time after 8 events all in Kansas City. So that should be interesting. And with it being in Iowa, Dave, are you contemplating making the drive over? That's not as far as a drive trying to go down to Kansas City, or?
Yeah, I'm already in the process of trying to trade days with a couple people so that I can make it over. But I keep taking vacation days for stupid things like the UFC and other things, so I got to trade. But
right.
One thing, I know the last time I went to Invicta, I was pretty sure Barb was training at her gym up in Minnesota, which is where I believe that's where she lives. When we interviewed her, I think she lives up there, she said. But I know for Kat fights on Saturday, and since her and Kat have fought, they've become real good friends. And she was actually out in Denver helping Kat get ready for her fight this Saturday. So I expect to see a vastly improved Barb Honchak in this fight because she was training at altitude, so that should help her a little bit as well. So I expect to see a completely maybe revamped is the right word, a revamped Barb Honchak. But for those who don't know who Barb is, do not sleep on that young lady.
All right, well, let's transition here to our Bellator. Actually, before we get to Bellator, I forgot we got Ultimate Fighter to talk about. We had the Ultimate Fighter from this past week. Yes.
No, go ahead. I think I have a question about the Ultimate Fighter, but I believe it's you need to explain what went on in the episode first. And I can't remember. I watched them both. I went back and watched them again. I don't remember when this thing happened.
So we have JoJo Calderwood, or Joanne, who's her real name, but everyone calls her JoJo. She took on Emily Kagan. Calderwood was ranked number 2 in this bracket tournament, and you had Kagan at number 15. Very close fight between these two ladies, Dave. I thought Calderwood was definitely starting to get the hang of everything late in that first round. I think I would have given Kagan the first round. It seemed like she was landing a little harder shots, was able to get inside pretty quick, nice explosiveness, and I think that kind of took Calderwood by surprise. But as the fight went on, you saw the kicks, the range, and the overall striking technique of Calderwood definitely started to show as she messed up Kagan's face. I thought pretty good, roughed her up a bit. And I would have had it 1 round apiece heading into the decision, which to me would have prompted the third round. But it ended up going down to a decision, and the judges scored it for Calderwood. Now, it was a close fight for those 2 rounds, but I really thought a third round was going to happen. I was surprised a third didn't.
Yeah, I can agree with you. I was shocked. Maybe not shocked is the right word. I thought that it should have gone to the third. We've heard it a gazillion times. That's an actual number, too, a gazillion. It's right after a quadrillion. But you can't leave it to the hands of the judges, especially in a tournament like this where the championship is on the line. It's unfortunate that they didn't get to go to that third round, but you're Joanne Calderwood. You got out of there with 2 rounds, rest up, and be prepared for who comes out of the bracket that's right there. It's really all you can do.
I know this is the Ultimate Fighter, Dave, and that's why it's 2 rounds, but since a world championship is on the line, wouldn't it have been nice that all these fights would be 3 rounds? Oh, Dave froze up there. All right, well,
Oh, we're back.
You froze up there for a second. I was just asking you, do you think all these fights should be 3 rounds?
You froze up and I was talking. Anyway, yeah, I really think that the Nevada State Athletic Commission has control because these are technically exhibition bouts because they're taped.
Well, they become exhibition bouts because the results are delayed. Technically, they're all professional bouts.
All right,
that's why it doesn't count on their record because the results are delayed.
Right, and I'm not sure if that has something to do with it. Me personally, I agree. There could be a lot of different scenarios at play in. If everybody's getting ready for 3-round fights, that's 3, 6, 9. That's 9 rounds in a short 6-week period. That's an extra round full of elbows and all that kind of stuff that could cause injury. I don't know.
Or do what Bellator did, take out the elbows.
Well, I agree that.
No, I don't. I just think that this is not just a silly contract on the line. You know what I mean? Where
Right.
A lot of the guys get signed anyway. But a world championship, add an extra week then. Make it 7 weeks instead of 6. Add like a bye week in between the. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Hey, I'm in a complete agreement.
Or they should have done another live season. I mean, Darren was there for 12 weeks. He was fine.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. Hey, was this the episode where they had the wall of panties?
Yes. And our good friend Feliz made the latest addition to that in this past week's episode.
Okay, so let me ask you this question. You know our good friend Ted Check, right?
Yes.
He does a lot of YouTube videos from what looks like his car.
I think that's the only time he has time, yeah.
Yeah. And he put up an interesting question, and it said, Felice Herrig, good or bad for business, agree or disagree?
I think she's good for business, and I think I said this right after the first episode. I said, win or lose, she's going to make this season fun. I think she's a great personality. She's a pretty good talent, and I think she really lightens things up, and I think she's great for business. Some people might not like her personality or maybe the way she conducts herself, but she's never been anything other than herself. She's not trying to be somebody else, and I think you got to at least respect that about her.
if you think she's bad for business, then you must think Chael Sonnen's bad for business, and you know, Nick Diaz. You know, it's
Michael
probably the same
Bisping.
people. The same people who hate Felice are like, Nick Diaz is the greatest fighter of all time. He's gonna whoop Anderson Silva. Who cares that he? See? This is what gets me mad. Felice Herrig is pretty. She wears seductive clothing. She gets people to check anything she puts on Twitter. People look at. She's been posting videos of her and her mom like sparring in the
Yeah,
kitchen.
so that was pretty funny.
Like, but you know, she's terrible for the sport. Meanwhile, Nick Diaz just got arrested on the suspicion of DUI, and he's in the main event against Anderson Silva of a card coming up. Felice Herrig doesn't get arrested. It just drives me nuts, Jim. These people can do things, be under the suspicion of this, talk about smoking weed and all that. Felice Herrig doesn't do that stuff. She's pretty, and she markets herself. Jim, if we had $1 million into Beyond the Cage and we sponsored her, we would get our money back out of sponsoring her.
I think so. Well, let's speak to an organization she used to fight for in Bellator, and let's transition talking a little Bellator fights, and let's mention our friends, VigilanteMMA.com. Follow them on Twitter at VigilanteMMA, and our friends at MMAinsider.net. Follow them on Twitter at MMAinsiderNet. Check out those websites. And Bellator 125 was this past weekend, and Dave, you and I have an interesting story, and I don't know if this plagued other people, and by other people I mean people with the AT&T service here, and both you and I normally work during the time Bellator happens. We watch it on the DVR after it broadcasts Friday night on Spike TV. Well, I think it happened at just about the same time as you, at about the 7-minute mark into the recording. No fights have happened. They just talked about what's going to happen in the card. The AT&T Uverse version hits an ad for some type of sweepstakes with Hunger Games catching fire, and then it stops, and it says, sorry, and it says the recording has finished. You're like, wait a minute, there's like 2 hours left on this thing. It's definitely not finished. I tried playing that thing like 50 times. I called AT&T. They couldn't figure what's wrong. Their only solution was to reboot the whole system, and it said it may delete that recording. I go, well, what's the point if it's going to delete the recording that I'm trying to watch that I'm calling you about? That doesn't do me any good. So I ended up having to just delete the recording. So I'm not sure what happened with the Spike TV high-def feed on AT&T, but you and I were both screwed, and we were not able to watch it after the event happened live.
Yeah, when the lady said that you should reset it, you should have said, "Hello, I'm Earth. Have we met before?"
Yeah, I couldn't believe that was like her last option after all the stuff wasn't working. Like, yeah, we can do like the total system reboot scary sounding thing and all your recordings are deleted. I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna do that.
That's a great idea. So then I can lose UFC 165, 66, 68, 69, 70.
I mean, I had just recorded the Gotham pilot on Fox. I'm not about to delete that, you know?
Yeah. There was a Garth Brooks special on that I taped. See my hat? Did you notice my hat, Jim?
That's a nice hat. It's almost as nice as your MMA Signatures hat. Check them out at MMASignaturesUSA.com and follow them on Twitter at AJ MMA Signatures. See what I did there? All right.
You know what would be great? I'll get into Bellator. Nick from A&N Sports Cards just said, to our point about Felice, he said Felice is why he's watching Tough. There you go. It'd be nice if Nick made some hats, because you would look good in an A&N Sports Card hat.
I take that.
I'm just saying.
You can make it a like a mesh hat, like one of these bad boys.
Or like a button. You could wear like a button. Like
I do like buttons. I got a whole bunch of buttons.
No, but not those little itty bitty ones. I'm talking like this, Jim, like a donut size, like huge.
Like bigger than this?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I still wear it.
Like this big.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'd bust that out.
Like just like this.
Like the lollipop size one?
Yeah. No, see, Jim, we've said it 1,000 times about Bellator under Bjorn Rebney. Little mistakes are what kill Bellator. They may have had the greatest card of the year. Not their fault that it canceled out, but they had to receive some sort of notice, and I can't believe it hasn't been back on Spike TV since then.
Yeah, I mean, just looking over the main card, Dave, it looks like we saw 4 finishes as Yamauchi took out Stapleton first round rear naked choke, and they had Javi Alila. He submitted Rafael Butler in the first round. Then you had Rafael Carvalho. He knocked out Brian Rogers in the first round, and then you had Melvin Manhoef knock out Doug Marshall in the first round. So, and I'm sure because of all those finishes, they showed some of the undercard fights in which only 3 fights on the undercard went to decision. There were like 4 more finishes on the undercard. So Bellator 125, maybe not full-on names, but definitely action-packed. Just looking over it, and I did see like the clips and the gifs, if you will, of the Manhoef fight, and that was very brutal, and that's what you expected from Doug Marshall and Melvin Manhoef. You didn't expect anything less, and for Brian Rogers, another loss, and it's unfortunate. He's a nice guy. We've had him on the show, Dave. He can be exciting, but I wouldn't be surprised if Bellator cuts him. I think he's lost 3 out of his last 4 fights or something like that. He's kind of going through a bad streak right now.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, I can't speak to how his performance was, but maybe it's time to regroup. Maybe it's time to see if there's a different weight division for Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers. See what I did there?
I see what you did there.
That was all. Oh, man. That's awful. I can't believe I did that. It doesn't sound like a beautiful day in the neighborhood for Mr. Rogers.
Oh, no, it does not. All right, well, let's move on to this weekend's Bellator fight, which hopefully DVR willing, you and I can watch. Looking at what's going to be on the main card, Dave, we should see some pretty good notable names. We got Ed West and Mike Richman. We also will have the other Pitbull brother, the 155 Pitbull brother. He will take on Masin Hell. That's a huge fight at 155. And then we're going to see a title fight as Alexander Shlemenko will take on Brandon Halsey, who submitted Brett Rogers in the first round. So who knows what he's going to throw to the table against Shlemenko. But also on this card, Dave, we got some notable names. We got Ryan Martinez. We got Brandon Gertz, who we've had on the show. He'll be making his Bellator return. Looking forward to that. We also have Derek Campos on the card, Joe Ty Manglo, and Jacob Ortiz, all guys who have fought Bellator before, have been on main cards. So, maybe not names everybody knows, Dave, but just for a Bellator card, got some guys who are very talented on this card.
Do you think Jacob Ortiz his middle name is Tito?
I don't think so, but I could be wrong.
Isn't Tito's real name Jacob?
I have no idea, to be quite honest.
Then that joke went way over your head.
Yes, I don't know. You'd have to Wikipedia that or something. Is Ask Jeeves still a thing? Can you ask Jeeves?
Is that still a thing? Yeah, they sponsor MMA fights inside barns.
Ask Jeeves.
AskJeeves.com.
Ask Jeeves and Dynamic Fastener. All right. Well, go ahead with your Bellator comments here.
Jacob Christopher Tito Ortiz. So see, that was funny.
All right.
Anyway, no, good Bellator card. It looks like a solid card. Shlemenko, we'll see. He's got to bounce back from that Tito loss. Masin Hell, that guy just keeps winning, and he's so young. He's like 20. So we'll see if he can keep rolling. And yeah, hopefully there's no problems with the DVR because I'll be in Sin City, so I definitely won't be watching this live. Sorry.
Shlemenko should win. What Halsey did to Cooper was impressive when we talked about it, Dave, but Shlemenko's a whole other animal than Brett Cooper. So that I fully expect Shlemenko to win and bounce back. Obviously, he's at his natural weight class of 185, or really, I think 170, but better weight class than 205 and taking on a huge guy in Tito Ortiz. And then I believe the Pitbull held fight, Dave, that is from this past season tournament, right? Because I think one of them got hurt. So the winner actually will get a shot at Will Brooks or Michael Chan, whatever they do with that.
Right. No, it is a tournament final, and
yeah, that should be excellent. You got the ultimate striker there in Pitbull, and then you have the ultimate submission guy there, and Masin Held.
Absolutely.
Most fights we obviously say it's whoever can impose their will, but I think in this one it's if Pitbull imposes the striking, he's for sure going to win. But if Held can turn this into a jiu-jitsu match, he's definitely going to win.
Yep.
All right, well, let's get to UFC now. UFC Fight Night 52 and UFC 178. But before we do that, let's mention our friends at MMAforlife.ca. You can follow them on Twitter at _MMA for Life, and they do a great job covering the weigh-ins. If you miss it live, they're always tweeting out the results and whatnot. So they're definitely a follow if you can't see the weigh-ins for any of the events. And of course, covering the local scene. They were up there, Dave, when you were at Hoosier Fight Club in Indiana, BluegrassMMA.com. You can follow those guys at Bluegrass MMA, covering the local MMA scene here for the Midwest. All right, UFC Fight Night 52, Dave, was shown on the Fight Pass this past Saturday morning. Started at 1 a.m. Eastern with the undercard, which led to the main card starting at about 3 a.m. Before we get to the main card, we got to mention he was on the show. Johnny Case made his UFC debut against Kazuki Tugdome. In the second round, he was able to put away Tugdome with a guillotine choke, which netted him the one of the Performance of the Night awards, an extra $50,000 in his pocket. And, it was a slow start for him. He probably lost that first round. He got controlled on the ground by Tugdome. The second round was able to find his range, take the takedown, stop the takedown. I thought landed some excellent straight rights, and that's kind of what led to the finish there. A great combination, some power shots in a scramble, caught him in the choke, and got him the tap there in the second round. And an awesome performance and a great victory for Johnny Case in his first UFC win.
Yeah, if you know anybody that's getting ready to make their debut, you want to send them over this way to guarantee some extra cash. That'd be cool. Everybody who comes on this show gets a bonus and a win in their Octagon debut. So strong work to Johnny Case, and that was that BJ that helped us out getting that interview?
Yes, BJ Huckfeld. So definitely thank you to him for setting up that interview, and we're also in talks to get another guy from him on the show coming up here. So
sweet.
Look forward to more fighter interviews.
Hey, just a shout out to Jim for doing all of his interviews and everything with these RFA guys and Johnny Case, and I'm always working when these guys can come on due to their training schedule. So I wish I could be there for a lot of them, but shout out to you, Jim, for doing fine work with all these interviews going solo.
Well, thank you, sir. Anything we can do, we try to be as flexible as possible. We try to get the double team there on the interviews, and it adds something a little different, I think, with you and I both on the call. But when a guy has a set schedule, sometimes it just it doesn't always work out that way. So we do the best we can, and thanks for that, Dave. I've been doing we got one more interview left in our RFA series. So far we got 4 done. We got one more coming up, and then we're going to release all of them together in one audio episode for everyone to listen to. So if you didn't catch them, when we put them on YouTube and everything, you'll get to listen to all 5 coming up for the week of the fight there on October 10th. And also we got a second here, interview coming up on the audio version of the show, and also will be available on YouTube later today, Wednesday. Darren Cruikshank coming back on the show. Got him coming up. He has a fight next weekend in Halifax, Nova Scotia. So we get Darren back on the program, so we'll hear what he's up to and what he's working on after, unfortunately, his loss in his last fight against Jorge Masvidal. But to the main card, Dave, UFC Fight Night 52 from Japan, first fight of the night, Koji Horiguchi against John Delos Reyes. And I tell you what, Dave, I think Horiguchi, now that John Dodson is gone, he might be the next big thing in this division and the next title challenger very soon for Mighty Mouse Johnson. And he looked awesome against Reyes. His speed was great. His power, he had it all on display on Saturday morning and was able to get a knockout in the first round at the 3:48 marker and let Reyes just about out cold after some of these combinations. And really the only thing I see Horiguchi has to tighten up if he wants to beat a guy like Mighty Mouse is keeping his hands up. He was very loosey-goosey against Reyes, and maybe that's because he's taken on a guy like Reyes. But if he takes on some of these top guys like McCall, Mighty Mouse, Benavidez, even a John Moraga, John Dotson, some of these top guys, Dave, he's got to keep his hands up because a lot of these guys are just as fast as him, and they can get in and hit him before he can answer. And that's really the only thing I saw that he has to tighten up on to get to a championship level.
Yeah, the one good thing that it's Horiguchi, right? Yeah, Horiguchi. The one good thing, he was able to take care of Reyes very early in the fight. Originally he was supposed to fight Kerry Azau on this card. Kerry Azau is now in the main event against Mighty Mouse this coming Saturday, live on pay-per-view, where the juice will be at the MGM. Anyway, but with the change of opponent, he was still able to dominate his opponent. Like you said, he's got a few little technical things he can work on to get to that championship level. Is he next in line for Mighty Mouse? It's an awfully compelling argument. Pretty much everybody else has had their shot. So, maybe one more fight and then give him a shot at the belt. But either way, good way to kick off the card and a good way to move your flyweight career on. Good way for him to move forward.
All right, this next fight, Dave, in the welterweight division, as Kichi Kunimoto took on Richard Walsh. This left me scratching my head, as I'm doing right now. If you're watching the audio version, you can't see it, but if you're watching the video version, you can.
He's actually scratching his head.
We've seen bad decisions before, but I thought this one was really bad, as I thought Richard Walsh was getting the better of the two. He was definitely the better striker. I thought he was doing more to finish the fight, came closer to finishing the fight. Really, to me, besides the third round, Dave, I thought Kunimoto was pretty much dominated for this affair, and it was really only the last half of the third round did we see Kunimoto finally get this thing to the ground after being unsuccessful in all his other takedown defense, and he got the back. Wasn't real close to getting the rear naked choke. Finished the round, with back control, which I would have gave him the third round, but I thought this was very easily a 29-28 fight for Richard Walsh, and somehow ended up being scored twice in favor of Kunimoto winning 2 rounds, and I feel bad for Richard Walsh. I know time zone wise it's not that big a difference between Australia and Japan, but distance wise it's very great, and he had to travel all that way to kind of get jobbed like that. I thought was very unfortunate.
Yeah, pretty much spot on. Hard to disagree with what you're telling me here, Jim. Leaving it in the hands of the judges. I said it earlier. Can't do that, and it goes back to the whole judging conversation. What are they looking for? I mean, what else could they be looking for?
Yeah, and then you want to back it up. You look at the stats, Dave. They heavily favor Walsh. It's not like, well, it was kind of close. No, Walsh was ahead in the striking category, the thrown category. Like I said, he shut down just all but one of the takedowns. The stats don't even back it up. When it's a close fight, you can tell and you can go, all right, but this is not a close fight. But yeah, leave in the hands of judges, you don't know what to expect, and Kunimoto got a gift. But I think with his performance, we're going to see Richard Walsh again. I really liked his performance. I think we're going to see him again.
Do we know why he wasn't around for so long? Because that season's been off the air for like 2.5 years.
I'm not sure. I don't know if he got injured or if he wanted to really focus on getting better training. They mentioned he spent some time at several different camps in addition to his home camp there in Australia, so maybe he just kind of wanted to travel and get really good, or I don't know, maybe there's injuries, he couldn't find the right opponent. Who knows? I'm not sure. I didn't really hear they didn't really mention that on the broadcast that he had suffered any injuries or anything. So... Cool. All right, next fight of the evening, women's bantamweight division. Miesha Tate took on Rin Nakai. She was able to win a unanimous decision after all 3 rounds. Did Miesha Tate win? Yes. Was it overly impressive? No. She proved she was the better stand-up fighter. She's had much improving stand-up since her days in Strikeforce, and I think she put that on display. Nakai, short and stocky, not a very big reach. A little raw still on the feet, had a hard time getting in range of Miesha Tate. She was able to hold Tate, couldn't really get a takedown, kind of was able to tie her up. I think that saved her from some damage, Dave, but really short of Nakai, getting in there and tying her up, she didn't really do much offensively.
No. You know what would be a great fight, Jim? Rin Nakai versus Clay Guida.
That would be bad. That's a good one. Like that.
Hey,
Man.
I'll be here all week. No, yeah. Miesha Tate wins a fight, unranked opponent on a win streak or whatever. Wasn't overly dominant, didn't get the finish. And, no, she was dominant, but she didn't get the finish. Sorry. And now she's saying she wants to fight Sarah McMahon, Jessica Ai, or...
She wants to rematch with Kat.
Yeah. Or she'll back into another title fight with Ronda if they let her. Like, to me, like, she's literally at the end of the line. Like, she needs to beat she needs to beat all those girls. Agree or no?
No, that's I mean, how many times has the UFC booked a third fight with people when the one person's 0-2?
Right.
I think has it happened once, I think? We saw the Rampage Vanderlei Silva fight, right? But those two fights didn't happen in the UFC. That was a trilogy fight.
And Faber Cruz was 1-1, right?
Faber Cruz was 1-1, yeah. But I'm talking in 0-2. I'm trying to think if they've. The Penn Egger. I think that's the only other one I've seen, right? Because Penn was 0-2. That's the only trilogy fight I've seen where the. And the Shamrock Ortiz.
Right.
Those are the only ones. So it doesn't happen very often.
I mean, let me click on these amazing UFC rankings. Hold on.
All right. Well, if you didn't see it on Twitter, speaking to your point, Dave, somebody tweeted her and said something about, hey, who do you want to take on? And threw some of those girls you mentioned, Jessica Ai and Sarah McMahon and Alexis Davis and stuff like that. And she said, I would fight any of those. And then I saw Jessica Ai responded to Miesha Tate, and it said something along the lines like, girl, I'll fight anybody. And I've said that since day one, since I came to the UFC. So I would, and Jessica doesn't have a fight book. She's been itching to get a fight, Dave. I would really like to see Jessica against Tate. Really, Jessica against anybody. I'd like to see her just back in action. But I think that'd be a tremendous fight, Jessica against Miesha.
I'm actually responding to Nick from A&N Sports Cards. He says Miesha deserves a shot over Kat. To which I responded, "You're an idiot." Okay.
He's a hardcore Miesha fan.
Yeah. Kat got where she was due to illegal knees. Shake his head. Well, keep shaking it, homie. Hey, let's go back, because this is a live show, and I'm on a rant because I'm going to Vegas, baby. UFC women's rankings currently, Jim. You have Ronda Rousey 1, Kat Zingano, or Rousey's a champ, Zingano's 1. The media members vote on this, Jim. They have already voted on it for this week.
Right.
They have Miesha Tate as the number 2 women's bantamweight fighter in the UFC. Number 2.
Horrible. Wow. She's in the top 10. Don't get me wrong. It's not like she shouldn't be in the top 10, but number 2, she has 2 UFC victories, right? Am I wrong?
No, I think you're exactly right.
Her first fight, she lost to Kat Zingano. Then she lost to Ronda Rousey. Then she beat Liz Carmouche. And then she beat Rin Nakai.
Yeah. So
she's 2-2, winning her last 2 fights
against people well underneath her. But I guess to counter my own argument, number 2 is a hard spot to fill because the next 3 people have all lost to Ronda: McMahon, Davis, and Kaufman. And I don't think you can put Jessica Ai as number 2.
No,
we like Jessica.
McMahon, and McMahon I think is the only one of those 3 that won recently because McMahon beat Laura Murphy.
Right, but it's just interesting because she's got that 2 next to her, so they're not going to do Jessica Andrade or Betch Correa against Miesha Tate. Mm-hmm. I'd love to see Miesha Tate, Betch Correa. I'd be a huge Betch Correa fan.
Mm-hmm. Well,
But
we'll see. I mean, Misha Tate seems to be the Michael Bisping of the women's division.
yeah, but
Everybody loves to call out Misha Tate, so she's gonna find a fight.
yeah, but if you're Jessica I and you beat Misha Tate, that's a big feather in your cap.
Oh, absolutely,
Do people
absolutely.
wear feathers in their caps anymore?
I don't know, maybe.
I wonder where that started.
All right, next fight of the evening: Sexy Yama against Amir Sadala, former Ultimate Fighter winner. And boy, man, was this performance just gosh darn sexy. I mean, it was incredible, Dave. I mean, very few performances in the UFC can really match how awesome that fight was. I mean, first of all, you had the entrance, with the great crescendo music from uh, from Step Brothers. There, you had the bowing. You had the praying, and you had the gi and the whole crew, and you had his corner wearing bling. I mean, man, I'll let you take it away, Dave. I'm at a loss for words of how great it was.
Tens. This guy. This guy should fight every week. Sexy Yama.
I don't think we can handle him fighting every week, Dave. It's just he's just too sexy.
Yeah. Bruce Buffer can't handle announcing him when he comes out. Nick, if Nick is still watching, Sexy Yama is so sexy that he knows what's in those cases before Nick opens them. You know what I mean? Like
That's a true statement. That's true.
You know, those commercials, the most interesting man in the world. They should do something similar with Sexy Yama.
I bet they got something like that in Japan, like one of those Japanese beers, like the sexiest man in the world or something like that.
Yeah.
They gotta have something like that because he's really big over there.
Yeah, Sexy Yama, he gives pep talks and both teams win. He bowls overhand.
Right. All right, let's look at these sexy stats here, Dave. He outstruck Sadala 94-63. He was 2 of 5 on his takedown attempts, and of the 94 total strikes, 57 were tallied as significant strikes, and that's an overall striking percentage, significant strike percentage of 47%. He also had a pretty good amount of ground control, and for Sadala, yeah, he was probably the better technical striker of the two, but the difference between the two was the power. Sadala's never been a guy who throws a lot of power shots, and I think after the first round, where Sadala, I think you maybe could have gave him the first round. I think in the second, third, he was starting to feel the power, maybe feel a little fatigue because a lot of not a lot of ring rust for him, but a lot of ring rust for both guys really, as they both hadn't fought in about 2 years, and I think all that was kind of accumulating this fight. And it may not have been the highest caliber of opponent that Sexy Yama has fought in the UFC cage, Dave, but considering all the stuff we just said, the ring rust, 39 years old now, I thought he performed admirably.
Yeah. This is one of those fights. Akiyama, he came out, was dominant in the performance. Clearly on the judges' scorecards, he won all 3 rounds. And Akiyama, yeah, he's the sexiest guy in the welterweight division. That's clear. Probably in all divisions. But it was a fight with 2 veterans. Are both veterans? I don't think either one of these guys has really got enough for another run. And it's a good victory in your home country for Akiyama. And I think he sticks around for a little bit longer. But we might get a little situation where, who was it that just won in their home? Tim Boach. I wonder if we get a situation like that where you get a nice comeback victory, in your homeland and kind of call it a career. Because I don't think Akiyama really has a shot to win the belt in the division. Do you?
No, probably not. But again, that's up to him. I mean, he's the guy who's I think he's gonna make a fun fight wherever he goes. Whether he wants to fight again or not. I think that's proven. And especially at 170, I think he, can do some damage in the division. Now, I don't think that'll lead to a title, but he definitely can make some fun fights. Personally, how do you like Sexy Yama against Matt Brown? I don't know if that would ever happen, but I think that that would be a tremendous fight. Could you imagine the power and all the punches and man,
Yeah.
that would be that'd be an excellent fight. That would be one I would be down for.
Yeah, I could sign on that.
All right, let's get to the co-main event of the evening as Miles Fury Jury took on the Fireball Kid Takanori Gomi. I tell you what, Dave, if you weren't a fan of Miles Jury before, if you thought he was kind of boring, a guy that, yeah, he's won, but, he hasn't got any finishes, well, I think that was all erased on Saturday night as he did something that had never been done to Takanori Gomi before, get knocked out. And he knocked him out in the first round, Dave, and at the 132 marker. And for a guy that, a lot of people may have called boring, wasn't always looking for the finish, well, that goes right out the window now. And I know Gomi's getting older and whatnot, but look back at his last fight against Isaac Valley Flag. That guy hits hard. How many punches did he take from Ike?
Yeah,
You know what I mean? So this guy can still get in brawls. I mean, he took on Diaz and Florian. All these guys weren't able to knock out Gomi. And Tyson Griffin. All these guys have fought Gomi over his UFC tenure, and Miles Jury was the one to do it and knock him out. And I know Gomi's getting older, but very impressive win for Miles Jury. It puts even more onus on this fight this weekend with Cerrone Alvarez Day because it looks like Rafael Dos Anjos is going to have to take one more fight before his title shot, as it looks as though Nate Diaz will make his long-awaited return to take on Rafael Dos Anjos. So, regardless, I know you don't like Nate Diaz, but if Dos Anjos beats Diaz, he's getting a title shot. I mean, he already beat Ben Henderson. He should probably get one already, but if he beats Diaz, that's a lock.
Right.
I don't think anyone can argue that. So, with the Cerrone Alvarez situation, we've said several times, if Alvarez wins, he probably gets the winner of Melendez and Pettis. I don't think too many people can argue that. I think that's going to happen. But if Cerrone wins, I think it sets up a Cerrone Jury title eliminator.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, and both guys would probably be up for a quick turnaround. First of all, the Miles Jury, it was nice. That was Death Rob playing in the background on his way out. Huh?
Yeah, we previewed that song about a week before, and I thought Miles was going to come out to it. And I was like, man, that's a really good track. I was like, that's why I put like Jury coming out to it ? And then he did, and I replayed it for everybody. But you haven't checked out that track. I believe it's called Lion's Heart. That's a good song. I like that one.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
No, Jury, like you said, if you thought he was boring, he's done something nobody else has ever done. It just shows you, the power that he packs in his punches. And how do you not like this kid? Like, he kind of comes from nowhere. Like, you didn't think he was going to go on this run. He goes on this run, and he wins fights. He's finished a couple, and now the UFC can't help but want him to be in a title shot, to be in a top 5, top 6 type fight, and yeah, I mean they've got him ranked at 8, which I think is probably fair. 8, maybe 6, between 6 and 8 would be a good spot for him. But yeah, the other thing I like about Jury is how they've brought him along. Slowly but surely, they've brought him along. They didn't win 2 fights and then say, hey, here's Donald Cerrone. They kind of brought him along on the right path. And every time he's fought, he's flourished. So good for Miles Jury.
Now, the only thing that derails the perfect Jury Cerrone title eliminators, of course, if Alvarez wins. Because if Alvarez wins, that throws that out of the window. And then you got to see how quickly Khabib Nurmagomedov can return. Because then I would say that's who Jury would take on next.
Hey, Jim, if you're a lightweight, if you're Miles Jury, let me think about. Hold on, let me think about this 1 second here. Hold, please. Tell them about your cards, Jim.
I don't have any music to play while on hold, but
talk about your cards.
How many base cards I have?
Yeah.
Well, for those of you who saw my Champions break, I have so many base cards. Okay.
Stop. I'm ready.
That's me filling time.
Yeah, that was good. So my point was, if you're a lightweight in the top, whatever it is, Okay, let's go over this. We know Gilbert and Pettis are fighting December the 6th. Nurmagomedov is injured, yes?
Yes, but
Okay.
he's been injured for a couple months now, so I can't imagine him being injured for much longer.
Okay, and then you have Dos Anjos and Diaz, like the 13th of December, I believe,
I
which is
think
the
so.
week. That's the week after um, the lightweight title fight. Bendo, and then you have Cerrone and Alvarez are getting ready to fight. If you're one of those guys, the quicker that you can stay healthy and maybe get back into a camp, you have to figure that there's a legitimate chance that Pettis doesn't make his fight to slide in for that title fight because, I mean, it's been a while since he's fought, and I mean, I know you like Pettis. I like Pettis, but it's out there that he gets injured quite a bit in camp with his crazy striking and all that kind of stuff. So if you're one of those lightweights, you've got to be prepared because you could get the call that Chris Carriezal got for this week. That title shot could be way, way closer than you actually think it is.
Well, let's get to the main event of the evening as Mark Hunt took on Roy Nelson, and it ended up being a second-round finish for the Super Samoan Mark Hunt in what was a tremendous fight. Both guys shelling out heavy blows, as we thought, Dave, and it ended up being Mark Hunt. Maybe a little bit of an upset getting Roy Nelson, but when both guys throw hard like this, it definitely was going to be a close fight. It definitely could win either way. And I guess the only thing that kind of irks me about this is Roy Nelson after the fight saying that after the eye poke, he was seeing double, he wasn't really seeing well, and he would have never got knocked out had he not got poked in the eye. And only Roy Nelson knows how bad his vision is. That's the only thing about this. It's not really like a tangible thing that you and I or anybody else can say, oh, yeah, his vision's bad. That's why he's not throwing good combinations. You can't pick that up from watching that. From what I did see, Dave, it seemed as though he was fine after the eye poke. Yeah, it maybe bothered him a little bit, but he was still throwing combinations. He was still landing a lot of powerful shots and kicks, Dave. He seemed to be fine. So I didn't like that excuse from a guy who's, I've never really heard him say many excuses before. He's not really that type of guy.
Right.
So that kind of irked me a little bit, because what Mark Hunt did was awesome. It was a great finish for him. And, this guy's had a lot of problems and taxes and visas and weight and all that stuff. So for him to get a victory there, I thought was awfully impressive. And, it kind of sucks that I don't think it tarnishes the victory, but it sucks that it kind of came out that, Nelson's making excuses after the fact.
Yeah. Hey, that's a big knockout for Mark Hunt. I don't know where it moves either guy, really, in the UFC. Every fight that they're in is going to be a fun fight. We've been over this. I don't think either one of them is going to beat Dos Santos or Kane or Stipe or any of those guys. They're just going to get steamrolled the higher they go up. But the fights are fun. It was a good way to end the morning, and the early morning for Hunt. And, when you got two guys throwing bricks in there, that's what happens. And Roy Nelson fell victim.
All right. Well, before we get to the final segment of the show, picks for UFC 178, let's, of course, mention our friends at TopRatedMMA.com. Check out their gear. As I said, TopRatedMMA.com. Follow them on Twitter at TopRatedMMA. And a portion of their profits go to the Hire Heroes Foundation to help veterans of the armed forces here in the United States get jobs. So worthwhile cause checking out their gear. Yes.
Can I have a veteran rant real quick?
Oh, you're talking about the Obama thing?
Yeah.
This is our new segment called Beyond the Cage.
For those that don't know, I was in the Marine Corps for 8 years. I got honorably discharged after 8. I came back to where I live now, south of Chicago a little bit. And look, I don't get into too many political arguments because it just doesn't end up the right way. But if you're the president of the United States and you're walking off of Marine One, which has got 2 Marines in dress blues that literally have to fly all over the world to stand at the bottom of the helicopter and open the stairs for you, the president, the least you could do is put your coffee in your left hand when you salute those 2 guys, because they're away from their families, and I mean, I'm not an officer, I never was, but that's pretty damn disrespectful when they're saluting him, and he's got a latte in his hand, and he goes like this. If you're seeing it on the video, but
Must have been a good pumpkin spice.
I mean, last thing, and then we can go to 178. The thing that drives me nuts is there's got to be like four other people who work for him on the helicopter that don't have to salute those Marines. Like, hey Jim, my aide's aide, like carry my spice latte. Like, anyway,
Yeah.
I digress.
Also, we got a minute. Check out AJ Hiller and his stuff at MMASignaturesUSA.com. Best signed MMA memorabilia on the internet. You can also check out his stuff on eBay. He's always putting up deal stuff on eBay. AM Hiller is his eBay name. So great way to get some deals. And also, I took the plunge, Dave. He said it on the show. He was thinking about authentication. We mentioned that he actually has officially MMA Signatures authentication system up and running for just $10 an item. And I got a couple of things that I got, and I sent them in today to get authenticated by AJ. So hopefully the news comes back that they're legit. I'll be a little disappointed if they're not, but at least they're items I think I can take off the autograph and get signed legitly. But I figure I'll take the plunge and I'll try to authenticate some items and see how it goes, and I'll let everybody know the results of that. And hopefully I didn't get swindled by anybody. So, so I'm taking the plunge there.
Let's talk UFC 178, live from the MGM Grand Garden Arena in beautiful, sunny, 88 degrees, Las Vegas, Nevada.
Let's, Dave. The first fight of the evening is in the women's bantamweight division, as Kat Zingano will take on Amanda Nunes. Now, of course, Kat Zingano is coming off a long layoff. She has not fought since she beat Miesha Tate, and that was almost 2 years ago. Not quite, but definitely a long time for her after going through ACL surgery. She's finally back in action. And looking at her opponent, Amanda Nunes, she is actually 3-1 in the UFC. Her only loss was to Alexis Davis. She got knocked out in the second round in terms of big names, and that was actually back in Strikeforce. So 2-0 in the UFC, but 2-1 against UFC competition. She has beaten not really two notable names people would know. Germaine de Randamie and Sheila Gaff are her two victories, but she knocked them both out in the first round. So she's been awfully impressive since that loss to Alexis Davis. Very aggressive fighter, knockout power, and to be honest, very similar to Kat Zingano. These are both strong bantamweights, both who like to get in there, get nasty, and go after the finish. So I expect a very entertaining fight. I expect a brutal fight, and I think a great fight to kick off this card. Yep,
I think that's fair. Kat's been out of the octagon for 532 days when it comes to the fight, which that's a pretty long time not being in there. She's had a lot of personal issues, and injuries. But I think the good thing is she didn't rush back. She took her time coming back. She did a couple of grappling competitions. She's done different things to make sure that she's competition ready. And I'm a huge Kat fan, but don't mistake, Amanda Nunes is a tough fight. If she comes out victorious, Kat defeating Amanda Nunes, will cement her spot as being the number one contender. It's not like she's fighting Rin Nakai on her fight back. It's somebody that, Amanda Nunes is, what is she, 9-3? Yeah, 9-3. All 9 of her victories are by knockout or submission, so she's a finisher. What I want to see, Jim, is Amanda Nunes. Has she? I'm clicking on it as I talk. Amanda Nunes. It's been almost a year and a half since she's gone 3 rounds. So I'll be interested to see. Oh, that doesn't make sense. They screwed that up. All of her wins have come. Oh, never mind. She lost that. No, I'd be interested to see if Kat can take Nunes to deep waters because, yeah, she can finish fights, but can she go into that third round? So that'd be something to look for.
The next fight is in the middleweight division as Tim Kennedy will take on Yoel Romero. And Tim Kennedy is coming off a very impressive 5-round victory over Michael Bisping in his last fight in the Tough Nations finale in April. And while that may have not been the most exciting fight, Dave, the fact that he went in there and pretty much out-wrestled Michael Bisping, who hadn't really got out-wrestled or held for any of his UFC career, regardless of the weight class, I think was awfully impressive. I mean, he went up against Chael Sonnen at Bisping, and Sonnen wasn't able to keep Bisping down. So a very impressive win for Tim Kennedy. Not the most exciting thing, but very impressive. And Kennedy has stayed undefeated in the UFC so far, and he's taking on a guy in Romero who, since coming to the UFC from Strikeforce, has been nothing but impressive, with 3 of his 4 victories by knockout, 4-0 in the organization. And he's a guy who arguably the most credentialed wrestler. This guy was a silver medalist in the Olympics for Cuba wrestling, and not only that, this guy he throws with reckless abandon. He hits super hard. I mean, this guy is a physical specimen at 185 pounds, an absolute beast. And his last fight he wasn't able to get a finish, but beat maybe his toughest test so far in the UFC. Brad Tavares is a very solid competitor, and he took him out with a 3-round unanimous decision, very dominant performance. And so for Romero, he's looking to add another notch to his belt here. He has the wrestling on lock. I mean, could Kennedy take him down? Sure, but I don't see him being that his plan of attack. It's got to be striking, in and out movement, and try to maybe tire out Romero, from throwing those big bombs. And if you're Romero, you got to keep up with your footwork and kind of stalk Kennedy and look to land those power shots. You got to try to counteract the footwork and speed of Kennedy getting inside, tie him up if you can, and that's kind of see how this fight going. If you're Kennedy, I wouldn't say this is a step down, but another victory. You're very slowly but surely moving up those middleweight rankings. That really helps you. And if you're Yoel Romero, you get a huge victory, and you're starting to get your name out there, and people are going to start talking about you as a title contender. So this is a very pivotal fight in the middleweight division, and you kind of got somewhat of a contrast to styles a little bit here, and I think it should be an exciting fight.
Yeah, this is a sleeper fight for me. There's a this card is loaded with fights that are pivotal in all divisions. Starting with the very first fight all the way through the end, they're all very pivotal within their divisions. And I think a lot of people are sleeping on the Kennedy-Romero fight. But this is a big deal in the middleweight division. You could be looking at the guy that's number 2 or 3 in line here in Kennedy. And if Romero is able to come out victorious, he's only 2 or 3 fights away from title contention. This is not an easy fight for either one of these gentlemen. And this is one of those fights that if we were doing picks for possible fight of the night, I think this has a legitimate chance of being one of them. Both of these guys are high caliber guys, and yeah, this is one I'm definitely looking forward to, since all the fights that my heart will be invested into are before this one, so I'll be able to actually sit back and enjoy this.
All right, the next fight of the evening will be in the featherweight division as the Diamond, Dustin Poirier, will take on the notorious Conor McGregor. And looking at Dustin Poirier, Dave, since losing to Cub Swanson back in February of last year, he has rattled off 3 consecutive victories, 2 of them being knockout finishes over some top competition in Eric Koch, Diego Brandao, and Akira Corisani being his most latest one, which netted him a performance of the night bonus. And he's taken on the new hype train in the UFC known as Conor McGregor, who is 3-0 since entering the octagon in April of last year, beating the likes of Marcus Brimage, Max Holloway, and Diego Brandao in his last fight, with 2 of those fights ending the way of knockout. And both guys are kind of long for this weight class, Dave. Both are listed at 5'9", very similar reaches. Both are dangerous strikers. I would say McGregor maybe has a little more power than Poirier, but Poirier's probably a little more refined, maybe a little more output, in terms of strikers. Submissions, we really haven't seen much from McGregor on the ground. He's pretty much been content to stand and has pretty much been the better stand-up fighter in the 3 UFC fights I've seen. Whereas we know Poirier definitely has some jiu-jitsu skills. He's submitted a couple guys before in the UFC and is no stranger, I think, to being on his back. So I think if it goes to the ground, I would definitely say Poirier has the advantage. And on the feet, it's really can the power striking and kind of that weird, kind of awkward Gunnar Nelson style that he's kind of developed from his teammate there, Gunnar Nelson, that kind of awkward karate stance. Is that going to prevail with the countering, or is it going to be kind of more the value striking and footwork and head movement of a Dustin Poirier? Very interesting fight, very intriguing, and anytime Conor McGregor's involved, there's always a certain level of hype and suspense and awe around it. It seems lately.
Yeah, let me read you some numbers from MMAJunkie.com. But everybody loves Conor McGregor. What he's doing is great. I like his swag. But let me read you some numbers about Dustin Poirier for those who want to sleep on the diamond. Poirier, this is his 11th featherweight bout. His total fight time is 1 hour, 40 minutes, and 53 seconds. That's the second most behind Aldo. It's over 2 hours. Poirier has 3 submission victories in featherweight competition, the second behind Oliveira. Poirier is 474 significant strikes landed in featherweight competition, are third most in division history, behind Holloway and Nam Phan. His 48.7% significant striking accuracy ranks 5th in history. I mean, some of those numbers, as often as he's been in the octagon, that you can't look past that. The time that he spent in the octagon, I don't think Conor's what? Conor went the distance in one of his fights?
Yeah, that was the Max Holloway win.
Yeah, so 5, 9, 10. He spent 10 minutes inside the octagon. Dustin Poirier spent an hour and a half inside the octagon in competition. You can say what you want. Dustin Poirier's fought, I believe, in Vegas before, hasn't he?
I believe so.
Yeah. He beat Diego Brandao in Vegas. I mean, Conor McGregor, I get it. He's the 3-piece suit wearing. He's like Ric Flair, right? But he's in Vegas, different time zone than where he's at. The heat is different. Is he going to make weight the right way? He's not in Ireland where he can sleep in his own bed. Is that going to be the same? There's a lot of stuff going on. And for Poirier, this is just another fight for him. It really is. Poirier wants to keep moving up the rankings. He's already higher than McGregor. But can you believe he's the underdog? Poirier is the underdog in this fight.
That's the hype train. I'm telling you, it's the hype train. If Conor McGregor wasn't as hyped as much as he is, everyone talking about him, if you just look at numbers and all the stats you brought up, the winning streaks and the finishes and the stuff I brought up, stylistically, this is actually like a pick'em fight. It shouldn't be. I mean, one guy has to be the favorite. It's ever but just looking at pure numbers, taking names and hype out of it, Poirier probably should be the favorite.
Yeah. Speaking of pick'em fights, Jim, you want to go over the co-main event of the evening? Man, that is two great trans.
Oh, the co-main event of the evening is the Cowboy, Donald Cerrone, against former Bellator lightweight champion Eddie Alvarez, who will be making his UFC debut. Looking at the Cowboy, Dave, since losing to Rafael dos Anjos back in August of last year, he has rattled off 4 consecutive victories, defeating the likes of Evan Dunham, Adriano Martins, Edson Barbosa, and Jim Miller. Oh, Dave, and to top it off, all those 4 victories, all finishes. The Cowboy has been on a roll as of late, and he is going to take on Eddie Alvarez, who is a great striker, great boxer, solid ground game, nothing impressive. He can get submitted, but when I look at Alvarez, he's a guy that I think is a good striker, but I think sometimes throws those skills out the window sometimes and kind of goes into a brawl and leaves openings. I think you saw that in his Pitbull fight, and you saw that and definitely the first Chandler fight. That's why he got knocked out. And if you leave openings against Donald Cerrone, he will find him. The Cowboy's a very dangerous guy. And even when you think you got the Cowboy finish, ask Edson Barboza. He can still be dangerous. I mean, he probably should have lost that Barboza fight. But he would come back and get a finish. Yeah, Melvin Gillard, yep. I mean, he is not to mention he's going to be taller and longer than Alvarez. And not believe it or not, even though he has knockout power, most of his wins are by submission. So if this thing goes to the ground or Cerrone, gets tied up with Alvarez, if it goes up against the cage, I think Cerrone can very easily submit Eddie Alvarez. He has those type of submission credentials. He's a very dangerous guy on the ground. And I think for Alvarez, he's got to be able to first get on the inside, and he's got to get out quickly. He cannot stick around. He has to be constantly circling. Those kicks of Cerrone are brutal, and he's proved that he can. Yeah, he has devastating leg kicks. He also can knock you out head and body. I mean, Jim Miller got knocked out with that head kick. I mean, he's a guy you got to watch for in all areas. And Eddie Alvarez, this is probably the best guy he's ever faced. Don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of Michael Chandler, but Eddie Alvarez or Donald Cerrone is pretty close to complete. There's not too many holes in Alvarez's game or in Cerrone's game. And Alvarez, he's got to be on his A game. He can't leave cell openings. He can't try to get in the brawl and force a knockout. And if it goes to the ground, he's got to be careful because those long legs can easily snap him up for a triangle choke.
Yep. Hold on.
Cowboy.
The second best entrance in the UFC. It's an interesting matchup. To me, it really is, and I'm looking at it from both perspectives here. If you're Donald Cerrone, you've been going on a tear. You'll fight anybody. You've said that 1,000 times. Who better than the guy that's supposed to be the greatest lightweight outside of the UFC than to fight? But if you're Eddie Alvarez, you've been waiting and waiting and waiting to come and prove yourself, and then the first fight they give you is against one of the most complete 155-pounders in Donald Cerrone. The thing that is, kind of weird to think about is if Alvarez loses this fight, I think he wrecks everybody else below Cerrone in the rankings. I mean, if he can't get past Cerrone, I don't think he can get past anybody above Cerrone.
That's true, because, I mean, think about it. Pettis knocked out Cerrone in the first round. Ben Henderson's already beat Cerrone twice. You look at a couple of the guys on top of him. So, yeah, if Alvarez can't get past Cerrone, it's hard to say he's a favorable matchup against Pettis and Melendez, the two guys currently ranked 1 and 2.
Right.
Or Ben Henderson is a little lower, but obviously former champion.
Right. But I think the UFC was screwed. They can't put Bobby Green against Eddie Alvarez. That won't sell.
Not yet. Maybe eventually. Bobby Green is working his way. It would have been nice to see Green Cowboy, but I think Bobby Green. This lightweight division is so good, Dave. Bobby Green will find someone good to fight.
The division's good when Eddie Alvarez is ranked 14th and he hasn't.
Right. Right. Yeah. Bobby Green will find somebody to fight. So. Yeah, exciting fight. Like we said, that we talked about the ramifications, what's going to happen. This is maybe even bigger than the Pettis-Melendez fight in terms of what it does for the division. This is a very pivotal. Speaking of pivotal bouts, this really sets what's going to happen with all the number one contenders moving forward. Once this fight happens, the division becomes a whole lot clearer as to the title picture after Melendez and Pettis.
Yep, you're absolutely right.
Main event of the evening, Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson once again puts his flyweight title on the line, this time against Chris Carriazo. Some people may think curious booking. It looked like John Dodson was all set to fight Mighty Mouse Johnson. He got injured. He's going to be out for a significant amount of time. And with that, they had to give Mighty Mouse somebody. Chris Carriazo was able to get past one of the up-and-comers in the division, Luis Smolka. He was given a title shot. He's one of the few guys that has not taken on Mighty Mouse yet. So why not Chris Carriazo? Give him a shot. He's a guy that has a lot of power in this division. Very tough guy, very durable guy. I think is starting to prove his wrestling a little bit. But once again, the key about fighting Mighty Mouse Johnson is speed and can you avoid getting hit? Because you could make a case that, Bogatinov in the last fight, he definitely controlled Mighty Mouse Johnson. He's the one that had Mighty Mouse's back up as a cage. But he couldn't handle the output. Even though Mighty Mouse was not in an advantageous position, Dave, Mighty Mouse was never not throwing something at Bogatinov. And then that fight, Bogatinov was visibly wore down because of all the strikes. All those little patter knees and punches and elbows, those eventually accumulated. So you might think you can hold Mighty Mouse down, but you're still going to get damage to you. And I think that's what was so impressive about his last fight, Dave, is that you may think you can hold him in position, but you're going to get hit. He's going to make you pay for whatever you do. And I think that was just another wrinkle he added to his game. And if you're Kerry Azau, you got to be on your super A++++, 185% game plan. I mean, you almost got to be perfect to beat Mighty Mouse Johnson. So far, no one's been able to figure this guy out at 125 pounds.
Yeah, the only person that's going to beat him is somebody with one-punch power. And Kerry Azau may have that, but the problem with knocking out Mighty Mouse is he has to stop moving, or you have to be 2 steps ahead of a guy who's already 2 steps ahead of you, which means like you have to like step.
You really got to be like 5 steps ahead of him.
Yeah, which is not possible. I mean, like unless you've got like a flux capacitor.
Right. Or you're the Flash.
No, we've been over this, Jim. The UFC ridiculous media rankings have Mighty Mouse as number 4 pound for pound. If he finishes Kerry Azau, to me, this guy is 2 or 3 in pound for pound in the world. Mighty Mouse does nothing but dominate in every fight that he's in at a championship level for all 5 rounds every single time, and he gets 0 credit. I think this is the 3rd fight that I'm going to be attending that that Mighty Mouse has been the main event or the co-main event, and I love every time he comes. He's so fast. There's not a better technical striker in the UFC than Mighty Mouse Johnson, and it's an absolute treat to watch him fight, and it's worth. You get to see all these other guys on this fight, and you get to see Mighty Mouse in the main event. This is worth $50. I'm telling you, this guy's fought nothing but at a high level for a very extended period of time. He was fighting at 135 and was being successful.
Yeah, and I think the only guy he lost to at 35, he had 2 losses at 35, Pickett and Cruz.
Yeah,
only 2, and both those were decisions.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if he gets by Kerry Azau, like we said, maybe Horiguchi's the guy. He's the next guy. Well, he's not right away. Horiguchi got to be somebody in the top, like a McCall or a Benavidez or something. But the list is becoming shorter of guys that Mighty Mouse hasn't beat, and sooner or later that list is going to be nobody, and he's going to have to move back up to 35. I mean,
2 things real quick. One question and a comment. One question. Dotson's going to be coming back from injury, and since the Ultimate Fighter is taped, would you be opposed to Dotson Mighty Mouse coaching if Dotson's able to coach?
Yes, and also they haven't had the flyweights as a weight class on the show, right?
Yeah, I don't like them coaching the division that all those guys are going to go into.
All right. Well, I'm just saying it'd be nice because they haven't had the flyweights on the show. It doesn't have to be the whole cat. It doesn't have to be 16 flyweights. It could be like 8 flyweights and 8 another class. Yeah, that'd be great. I'd like to see that. 8 heavyweights and 8 that'd be awesome. Because the little guys couldn't train with the big guys. So that would be great. Oh, I would love that. Oh, man. Yeah, That would be awesome. And then being coached by the 2 short guys.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, well, with that said, Dave, let's get to some picks.
Hey, before we get to picks, can I make one comment?
Sure.
Don't forget to check out Fox Sports 1, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, kicking off the Fox Sports 1 prelims. Brian Ebersol fights John Howard. So definitely make sure you check that out. I'm telling Saturday's a perfect night for fights, man. Brian Ebersol and John Howard kicks off the prelims, and then the undercard is loaded. You like Stephen Thompson? He's fighting Patrick Cote.
Yep, that's a good fight.
Masvidal against is it Pasquale Kraus?
No, James Krause.
James Krause.
That's a good fight.
That's a good fight. And then Cruz is back, and he's fighting Mizugaki as the main event.
Top 10 bantamweights. So yeah,
Tot-
stacked
to-
undercard.
Totally worth tuning in. Fox Sports 1 all the way through the pay-per-view. So, yeah, and we got to remind people before we do picks, we're going to do some sort of post-fight show, maybe Saturday night, maybe Sunday afternoon, live from Vegas. We're going to do a hangout. Probably have our good friend Doug Keese with us.
And maybe joined by a victorious Brian Ebersol.
Maybe.
Who knows? All right,
Maybe.
well, let's get to picks here. First fight of the evening, women's bantamweight division, Kat Zingano against Amanda Nunes. I think both are ferocious females, Dave. I think that's a good way of describing this fight, but I got to go with Kat Zingano. She's taken on a little better competition. I know there's ring rust, and I think that is something you got to look at as a factor in this fight, but I'm taking Kat.
That's a good pick.
Boom.
That is also a good pick. See what I did there?
For the audio people, he picked Kat, if you didn't know that already. Next fight of the evening will be in the middleweight division, Tim Kennedy against Yoel Romero. Man, I think this is a really close fight. I really like both guys. I've always been a fan of Tim Kennedy, but Romero, man, it's hard not to like this guy, all the skills he brings to the table. But I'm going to go with Tim Kennedy. Maybe a little better, maybe strategy-wise. It's going to be close, though, but I'll go Tim Kennedy.
Yeah, because of the whole latte incident, I'm going to go with Tim Kennedy. I agree with you, Jim, that both of these guys, this is a very close fight, but I'm going to stick with the veteran and go with Tim Kennedy. Dustin
Poirier against Conor McGregor, featherweight division. Another excellent fight, another close fight. I do like Conor McGregor. I don't hate him. I think the hype is deserved. I think he's a guy that can do some things in this division, but I'm a fan of Dustin Poirier. I think people are kind of sleeping on him a little bit here. So I'll go with, I guess, what the underdog in the fight. I'll go with the diamond here.
Yep, I'll take the underdog too. Dustin Poirier. It's baffling to me. I could go on for an hour, Jim. It's baffling to me how he's done nothing but be victorious. He's a veteran and he's an underdog against somebody who's beat zero competition.
Co-main event of the evening, Eddie Alvarez against the Cowboy, Donald Cerrone. I like Eddie Alvarez. He's a likable guy. It's unfortunate that whole thing with Bellator. He couldn't get to the UFC sooner, but he's taken on a very tough guy in the Cowboy on a roll, maybe the best roll of his career, and tough fight for your first fight. So give me the Cowboy in this one.
Well, I'm packing up my game and I'ma head out west where real women come equipped with scripts and fake breasts. Find a nest in the...
Ooh, they said breast. We don't like that on our show.
You can say that. That's a technical term.
I'll take the Cowboy. I like Eddie Alvarez. I think that he can be a force to be reckoned with, but of all the people in the UFC to make your debut against, this is a bad one.
Main events of the evening, Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson against Chris Carriazo. I like Carriazo. He's a likable guy. He's a solid flyweight, but man, I don't like his odds against Mighty Mouse Johnson. I don't like a lot of people's odds against Mighty Mouse, but fortunately for Carriazo, he's going to be a huge, huge, huge underdog, and yeah, I'm picking Mighty Mouse.
Yep, Mighty Mouse all the way. Viva Las Vegas.
All right, he is the Juice Dave Sadler. You can follow him on Twitter at VigilanteJuice. I'm your host, Jim Graham. You can follow me on Twitter at Jim Graham. For those of you watching live or on-demand video version, check out our interview with Darren Cruikshank coming up later today, youtube.com/BeyondTheCagePodcast. Or if you listen to the audio version, it'll be available there as a bonus round as well. So for Dave Sadler, I'm Jim Graham. Thanks to all our website and partners, and thank you for listening to another edition of the Beyond the Cage podcast presented by Fight Chicks.